Hey everybody, this is Coach Goodrich. I am coming to you from right now from my office. So this is a little strange, a little different for everybody, but we have to adapt and improvise and overcome everything that's being thrown our way. So for the time being, any and all guided notes will take place here. These are going to be posted to my YouTube channel, which I've had for a long time, but is now going to get revamped. You can follow along using your guided note packets, and you'll be expected to fill them out just like if I was lecturing in class. These should be completed on Monday at the beginning of the week whenever they are assigned. And I'll tell you if there's like a stopping point or something, a mini quiz that you need to complete in tandem with them in order for us to meet the take-home education requirements. You can follow me on Twitter, which is Coach Goodrich85, which I'll be posting updates and reminders. I'm also going to get the Remind app, and I will let you guys know what that looks like and when that happens, hopefully sometime today. But today is March 19th. It's a Thursday. This is my second time using this technology, so we're going to try it out. But this is for Unit 6, Part 2 for Africa, Ancient African Civilizations, as part of my 6th grade Heritage Studies / Cultural Geography class. So my 6th graders should be watching this. 8th graders, hopefully you've already done this. And this is not going to benefit you in any way for your upcoming assignment. So go find another video to watch. But we're going to be talking about Africa. There you go. You got Africa. So looking at this geographical image of the continent of Africa. Africa is the second largest continent after Asia. It is a continent with the most countries, anywhere between 54 and 56 countries, depending on really the year. They have a lot of fluctuation in those numbers, especially over the past 20 years or so. But it has the most. It is the continent that has the most countries on it. And you can look here, you can see the different regions in terms of the geography. The top part is going to be filled with the Sahara, which is the second largest desert. You can look and you can see over in the top right, there is where the mouse is right now, top right corner, you see the Nile Delta and Egypt, which we've already kind of talked about. We're going to be focusing more on everywhere else besides Egypt and Aksum, or the Kingdom of Ethiopia as it would become known. As you work your way further down into the different regions, you have the Sahel, which is like this little band of green and brown regions together. And then you're going to see, as you get further down, you can actually get into the savannas and into the rainforest. The more green it gets, and you work your way down further to the bottom, you get into more mountainous regions of South Africa. And then Madagascar is off to the right. There's a couple other little islands that are a part of it. But we're going to continue on, moving on. So this map of Africa is actually split into 6 different regions. We're actually going to simplify it even more, and we're going to just focus on 5, which are right here. So Africa is a very large region full of very different geographic features: rivers, deserts, beaches, jungles, plains, etc. There are 5 main regions: the northern, western, central, eastern, and southern. So northern, western, central, eastern, and southern regions, just for the sake of us trying to keep up with it. Simplify things as we are going. In northern Africa, and I would write these down, these should be recorded down in your notes. You got the Western Sahara, which is over here in this region, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Sudan, and then South Sudan is down over here. South Sudan is actually one of the newest countries. It's only like 10 years old. One of the newest countries in the world. And these are going to be the closest to Europe, as well as the bordering with the Mediterranean Sea. So we will have time for videos later on as we're working our way through everything, but I want to make sure that we get this good stuff first. Western Africa, a bunch of countries, also referred to as the Gold Coast. A lot of the gold mines are here, and we'll spend a lot of time talking about that as we get further on into the unit. But you have Gambia, Ghana, Senegal, Togo, Cape Verde, Benin, Guinea-Bissau, Mauritania, Guinea, Mali, Sierra Leone, Niger, Liberia, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, and Burkina Faso. Yes, Cape Verde is an entirely island nation, and you see a lot of the roots down here. Actually, Cote d'Ivoire, which is right here, is actually French for Ivory Coast. A lot of ivory found in that region. Liberia was actually started by a group of Americans looking for a region for former slaves to go settle back in Africa in the years leading up to the Civil War. And their capital city is called Monrovia, after James Monroe, the president who helped to set that country up. A little fun fact for you. Central Africa, just located in the middle. Chad, Cameroon, Gabon, the Central African Republic, abbreviated as CAR, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, just the regular Republic of the Congo, and Angola. And these are going to be a lot of the jungle regions as you're working your way from the northern Sahara deserts, and you go into the savannas and the Sahels of the western part of Africa, and then you finally get into the rainforest and more wet regions of the country. We will watch these, like I said. Eastern Africa, you have Eritrea, Burundi, Djibouti, which is a funny one. Everyone usually gets a laugh with that. Zambia, Ethiopia, Zimbabwe, Somalia, Mozambique, Uganda, the Comoros, Kenya, Malawi, Tanzania, Madagascar, and Rwanda. These are going to dominate the eastern side of it, which is going to be closest to the Indian Ocean, closest to Asia and the Middle East, respectively, in Saudi Arabia. And then Southern Africa, the simplest in terms of what you have to remember. Nambia, Botswana, Swaziland, Lesotho, which bears the remarkable distinction of being a country that is totally surrounded by another country. Swaziland kind of fits in that as well. And South Africa as well. So as you can tell, kind of like the United States, because it's so widespread, Africa is very diverse climate. Depending on where you're standing, you're going to have, it could be a desert, it could be mountain regions, it could be very, very cold, it could have rainforests. It's depending on where you are, it's going to be very, very different. It's one of the few places on Earth that has deserts both north and south of the equator. It's actually the only country, or excuse me, the only continent that has that distinction. There are savannas located directly underneath the Sahara Desert. The plains region going to have a lot of lakes, hundreds and hundreds of lakes, big lakes too, Lake Victoria, Lake Chad, Lake Nasser, Lake Volta. Nile River is obviously one of the longest and most famous rivers in the entire world. We talked about that during the Egypt unit at the beginning of the year. The most famous mountain peak is Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, which overlooks a lot of the Great Plains regions that are surrounding it, which have a lot of the more famous wildlife preserves on them. So there you go. So we have the Sahara, a little close into the Sahara. That is what the Sahara looks like. You have a camel train right there, probably a Bedouin desert nomads who live there and have lived there for thousands and thousands of years traditionally. An example of an oasis, you can always tell where an oasis is because there's going to be trees there. An oasis, from your vocab, are trees, is a water source that is found in the middle of the desert. A lot of the Arab and Bedouin encampments are going to spring up around these regions because they have water. As you work your way south, you go through the Sahel and then into the savannah, so not very many trees around here. Nice picture of an African elephant here. A lot of tall grasses. This is where the more famous areas of, like from the Lion King and Disney World do a good job of representing the Serengeti regions around here. You have Lake Victoria, which is in the middle of Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. Not that far away from Rwanda either, but you can see the Serengeti Plain located just southeast of that famous lake. It's going to be filled with water from the Nile. It helped to feed into it as well, and a bunch of other little rivers and streams as well. And there's the Nile River that feeds into it. This is obviously a little bit more south as you're working your way towards Lake Victoria. And then that's Mount Kilimanjaro, which is constantly covered with snow. Definitely one of the more recognizable landmarks in all of Africa, if not around the world. And you see some pictures of some giraffes and some wildebeests going around there. So let's see how much time we have associated. Okay, we got a couple minutes left for today. So Africa's past. Recorded history begins with the Bantu people as they migrated from the Benue River into the other parts of Africa. What we know about the history of Africa, we know because we study 4 different things. Now, like I've told you guys, the reason that we're studying these all grouped together with Mesoamerica and Africa, even though they're so far away from each other, is because unlike a lot of the other civilizations we talked about, there is a distinct lack of written records. Now, whether they just were never written down or they were and they have been lost or destroyed throughout time, we don't really know. But because of that, we have to study this history in a different way. It's not like with the Greeks or the Egyptians where we can just line up and we have translations and we have all these recorded documents that have been discovered, that have been found, and we've been able to translate them, and we've been able to read and study directly. So we have to kind of do some indirect methodology in terms of our studying. So the main way that we study a people group or a country or a continent or an area that does not have set written records is going to be through these 4 things: linguistics, botany, archaeology, and oral history. Linguistics is a study of language. Linguists are people, scientists, and historians who study language and how it impacts other languages and how it changes throughout the centuries, and we're able to use that to trace people groups with similar languages, usually back to a common ancestor. Botany, the study of plants and crops. Plants and crops move and change as people move and change, depending on certain regions. And people are going to be drawn to different food sources depending on where you are. So we're able to study the movement and path of people with that. Number 3 is archaeology, studying of the ancient civilizations. This is usually through ruins. People think archaeologists, I think Indiana Jones, but they go around and they find different treasures and different historical sites, and they study from artifacts as they become more apparent, and they're digging in the ground and things like that. So maybe a little glorious, glamorous, but it's a good way to make a mental connection. And then number 4 is oral history, passing down stories from generation to generation. Now, with this, usually these stories change to reflect the people who are telling them throughout the years. So maybe not the most accurate, but at least we have something to go off of. Typically, it is oral history, passing it to other people, and then finally it gets written down, and it can usually be a very different story than when it started, but it is better than having nothing to study or nothing to go off of. A couple more minutes here, guys. So we're talking about linguists. You see the different languages that are up here: Arabic and Berber in the northern part. You have Saharan, you have more Arabic right here, which makes sense because Saudi Arabia is like a couple 100 miles that way. But all the different languages right here: the Songhai, the Mande, the Bantu, which is by far the largest, actually started in the north and made its way south, had the largest impact on the Swahili language as we know it. And then the different regions down here as you're getting, and then the Indo-European, which would be related to the first settlers from England and from the Netherlands who were going to settle in South Africa. So this is actually where we're going to end it for the day. I appreciate it. This is going to be seen as part 3 of our notes as we're going through. So be ready for part 2, which will probably be coming out next in time for next week, maybe a little bit later on in this week. But I appreciate you guys. Make sure that you're filling in your notes as you're going and completing all the other assignments. If you need anything, you guys all have my phone number, so please reach out to me. And make sure that you guys are doing your work, all right? We got to put in the work now that we were normally doing in school. And I'm excited. I think this is going to be a really cool thing, and it's going to open up a lot of cool new avenues for technology to be integrated in the classroom. All right, guys. You guys be safe out there, be smart, and we'll talk to you guys soon.